The war between Earth and the Zorath Dominion lasted only 8 months, but it changed everything. The Zorath had conquered 12 star systems. They had crushed species far more advanced than humans. They expected Earth to fall within weeks. It did not. Humans fought with a desperate fury that the Zorath had never seen before. They used tactics that seemed insane. They sacrificed ships to protect civilian transports. They rigged asteroids with explosives and launched them at Zorath fleets. They refused to surrender even when the numbers said they should. The Zorath won most battles, but every victory cost them dearly. After 8 months, both sides were exhausted. Queen Valari of the Zorath Dominion proposed peace. She was young for a Zorath ruler, only 200 years old, but she was wise enough to see the truth. Humans were not worth the cost of destroying them. Better to make them allies, or at least keep them quiet. The Galactic Council helped arrange the treaty. One of the terms was a diplomatic marriage. Queen Valari would take a human husband. This would show the galaxy that the Zorath accepted humans as equals. It would also give the Zorath a hostage, though no one said this out loud. The council selected Daniel Cole for the marriage. He was 34 years old. He worked as a mechanic on a small colony station near the edge of human space. He had no family except a sister named Laura. He had no wealth, no fame, no special skills that anyone knew about. He was, by all measures, completely ordinary. When Daniel received the message telling him he had been chosen, he was covered in engine grease and eating a cold sandwich. He read the message twice. Then he finished his sandwich, cleaned his hands, and sent a reply accepting the honor. 3 weeks later, he stood on the Zorath throne world. The planet was called Zorath Prime, and it was beautiful in a cold way. The cities were made of black stone and silver metal. The sky was purple, filled with 3 small moons that never seemed to set. Everything was designed to show power. The buildings were tall, the streets were wide. The guards wore armor that could stop most weapons in the galaxy. Daniel walked through the palace with 2 Zorath escorts on either side. They were each 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were solid black like polished stones. They looked at Daniel the way someone might look at a small insect. The throne room was the largest space Daniel had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands of Zorath nobles filled the room, all watching as the small human walked toward their queen. Queen Valari sat on a throne made of some dark crystal that seemed to absorb light. She was tall and elegant, with silver-white skin and eyes that glowed faintly gold. 2 of her 4 arms rested on the throne, while the other 2 held a ceremonial staff. She wore a crown of black metal shaped like flames. She watched Daniel approach with an expression of mild curiosity, like someone examining a strange new pet. Daniel stopped at the proper distance and bowed. He wore simple formal clothes, nothing fancy. He carried no weapons that anyone could see. He looked exactly like what his file said he was, an unremarkable mechanic who had been randomly chosen for an impossible role. "So," Valari said, her voice echoing through the vast room, "this is the human they send me?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Daniel replied. His voice was calm and steady. "I hope I am acceptable." A few nobles laughed. The idea of a human being acceptable or not seemed funny to them. Valari did not laugh. She studied Daniel with those golden eyes, searching for something. She did not find it. "You understand what this marriage means?" she asked. "I do. You will live here, in my palace. You will follow our customs. You will never see your homeworld again, most likely. You accept this?" "I do." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise even Valari. She had not planned to ask it. Daniel thought for a moment. "Because peace matters more than my comfort. Because someone had to say yes. Because I have no family waiting for me, no life that would be destroyed by leaving. I am the best choice. Valari tilted her head slightly. It was not the answer she expected. She had expected fear, or false bravery, or perhaps some speech about human courage. This simple honesty was something different. Very well, she said. Let the ceremony begin. The wedding was grand, beyond anything Daniel had ever seen. There were songs in languages he did not understand. There were lights that danced through the air like living things. There were rituals involving fire and water and blood. Daniel followed every instruction perfectly. He had studied Zorath customs for the 3 weeks before his arrival. He made no mistakes. When it was over, Valari looked at her new husband with a faint frown. She had expected him to stumble, to embarrass himself, to prove that humans were as clumsy and foolish as the Zorath believed. He had not. Commander Kethra, the Queen's most trusted military advisor, stood nearby. He was older than most Zorath in the room, his gray skin darker with age. He had fought in 17 wars and killed more enemies than he could count. He watched Daniel with narrow eyes. I do not trust him, Kethra said quietly to Valari after the ceremony. He is one human, Valari replied. What threat could he possibly pose? I do not know. That is what troubles me. Valari dismissed his concerns with a wave of one hand. You see threats everywhere, old friend. This human is a mechanic. He fixes broken machines. He has no psionic powers, no military training, no useful connections. He is a symbol, nothing more. That night, Daniel was shown to his quarters. The room was larger than the entire station he used to live on. The bed could have held 10 people. The window looked out over the glittering city below. Daniel stood at that window for a long time, watching the alien world move beneath him. His face showed nothing. His body was completely still. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a small device no bigger than a coin. He pressed it once, and a tiny green light blinked 3 times. Far away in a hidden room on Earth, a screen lit up with a simple message. Asset in position. Laura Cole read the message and nodded slowly. Her brother had done it. The first part of the plan was complete. On Zorath Prime, Daniel Cole put the device away and went to sleep. Tomorrow would be a long day. He had a role to play. The Queen believed she had married an ordinary human. She had no idea how wrong she was. 6 weeks passed on Zorath Prime. Daniel Cole settled into palace life like water settling into a container. He made no complaints. He asked for nothing. He followed every rule and respected every custom. The servants did not know what to make of him. Most Zorath nobles spent their days in politics and games of power. They held meetings to discuss who was strong and who was weak. They formed alliances and broke them. They showed off their wealth and their abilities at every chance. This was normal in the Dominion. Power was everything. Daniel did none of this. Instead, he spent his days in the engineering bays deep beneath the palace. These were forgotten places, filled with old machines and broken equipment that no one had touched in decades. The Zorath considered repair work to be low-class labor, something for servants and slaves. A royal husband working with his hands was unthinkable. But no one stopped him. Queen Valari had not forbidden it, and no one else dared to give orders to the Queen's husband, even if he was just a human. So Daniel worked. He fixed old atmospheric processors that had been abandoned 50 years ago. He repaired communication systems that palace engineers had declared impossible to save. He rebuilt power generators using parts he made himself. Every day, he arrived before sunrise and worked until late at night. The servants began to talk. They said the human was strange but harmless. They said he was kind to them, which was unusual. Most nobles treated servants like furniture. Daniel learned their names. He asked about their families. He thanked them when they brought him food or tools. Queen Velari heard the gossip and found herself curious. One evening, she visited the engineering bay without announcing herself. She wanted to see this strange human when he did not know he was being watched. She found Daniel sitting on the floor, surrounded by pieces of an ancient machine. His hands were covered in black grease. His hair was messy. He was humming a soft tune to himself as he worked, something from Earth that she did not recognize. He looked up when she entered. If he was surprised, he did not show it. "Your Majesty," he said, starting to rise. "Stay," she commanded. She walked closer and looked at the machine he was working on. "What is this?" "A water purification unit. The palace has 7 backup systems for emergencies. This one stopped working about 60 years ago. Your people wrote it off as beyond repair." Velari frowned. "And you can fix it?" "Already done. I'm just putting it back together now." She watched his hands move. They were quick and sure, never hesitating. Every motion had purpose. In the Zorath military, she had seen elite soldiers who moved like this. It was the efficiency of someone who had trained for years. "Where did you learn this?" she asked. "On the colony station. Things broke all the time. We could not afford to throw anything away, so we learned to fix everything." It was a reasonable answer. It explained his skills without explaining the strange grace in his movements. Velari filed this observation away in her mind. "You spend every day down here," she said. "Why?" Daniel shrugged. "I like solving problems. Broken machines are honest. They do not play politics. They do not pretend. They are broken, and then they are fixed. Simple." Velari almost smiled. Almost. "You find our politics tiresome?" "I find them complicated." "I am a simple man, Your Majesty. I prefer simple things." She studied him for a long moment. He met her eyes without flinching, without the fear that most people showed when facing her. There was no challenge in his gaze, no defiance, just calm patience, like a deep lake that nothing could disturb. "You are strange, Daniel Cole," she finally said. "I have been told this before." This time she did smile. Just a little. Then she turned and left without another word. Over the following weeks, the situation at the borders grew worse. The Vakari Consortium, a rival empire that had long hated the Zorath, began testing their defenses. Small fleets would appear near Zorath space, probe their sensor networks, and disappear. Messages arrived from Vakari ambassadors with thinly veiled threats. War was coming. Everyone knew it. Queen Velari spent her days in the War Council chamber, surrounded by generals and admirals. They argued about strategy and troop movements. They debated which systems to defend and which to sacrifice. The air in the palace grew tense and heavy. Daniel was not invited to these meetings. He was just a ceremonial husband, after all. He had no military experience, no strategic value. He continued working in the engineering bays, invisible and forgotten. But Commander Kethra noticed something. The War Council chamber had a balcony on the upper level, a place for servants and minor nobles to observe without participating. Daniel started appearing there, quiet and still, watching the proceedings. He never spoke. He never interrupted. He just watched. Kethra tracked Daniel's eyes during one meeting. The human was not looking at the speakers. He was looking at the tactical displays, the maps showing fleet positions, the data streams listing ship numbers and weapons capabilities. His eyes moved across this information with focused intensity, like someone reading a familiar book. After the meeting, Kethra approached Daniel in the hallway. "You attend the War Councils now," Kethra said. It was not a question. I find them educational, Daniel replied. What does a mechanic know about war? Daniel looked at the old commander. Something flickered in his eyes, there and gone in an instant. I know that the Vicari are massing their main fleet at Sector 7. I know they are waiting for you to commit your reserves to the border before they strike at your supply lines. And I know that if you do not change your defensive formation, you will lose the outer colonies within 3 months. Kethra stood very still. These were his own conclusions, reached after weeks of analysis. The human had figured them out by watching a few meetings from a balcony. Who are you? Kethra asked quietly. Daniel smiled. It was a friendly smile, harmless and warm. I am a mechanic, Commander. I just like solving problems. He walked away, leaving Kethra standing alone in the hallway. That night, Kethra went to the Queen's private chambers. He told her what had happened. He told her about Daniel's eyes on the tactical displays. He told her about the analysis that should have been impossible for a simple mechanic. Valari listened in silence. When Kethra finished, she walked to her window and looked out at the city. What do you suggest? She asked. Watch him. Carefully. There is more to this human than he shows. Valari nodded slowly. I am beginning to agree with you. Far below the palace, Daniel Cole sat alone in the engineering bay. He was not working on machines tonight. He was looking at a small holographic display, studying the same tactical data he had seen in the War Council. His fingers moved across the display, running simulations, testing strategies. His face was calm but focused. The mechanic from the colony station was preparing for war. And no one knew it yet. The diplomatic banquet was the largest gathering in years. Over 5,000 guests filled the grand hall of the palace. There were Zorath nobles from every corner of the Dominion. There were ambassadors from 30 different species. There were merchants, generals, scholars, and priests. Everyone wore their finest clothes. The hall glittered with jewels and precious metals. Music played from hidden speakers, and servants moved through the crowd carrying trays of exotic food and drink. Queen Valari sat on a raised platform at the far end of the hall. She wore a gown of black silk that seemed to flow like water. Her crown gleamed under the lights. She looked magnificent and powerful, exactly as a queen should look. Daniel stood beside her throne, slightly behind. He wore formal clothes that the palace had provided, dark and simple. He looked clean and presentable, but unremarkable. Several guests had already forgotten he was there. The evening passed slowly. Valari spoke with important visitors. She accepted gifts and made promises. She played the game of politics with skill learned over 2 centuries. Daniel watched. He always watched. At some point during the 4th hour, he noticed something wrong. His eyes moved across the crowd, tracking movements that seemed slightly off. 3 servers had entered from a side door. Their uniforms were correct. Their movements were smooth. But they did not move like servants. They moved like hunters. Daniel leaned slightly forward and whispered to a nearby guard. The 3 servers by the east pillar. Watch them. The guard frowned but did not move. Why would he listen to a human? It was a mistake that would cost many lives. The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, people screamed. Someone shouted for the guards. Then the lights flickered back on, and chaos erupted. The 3 servers had transformed. They had thrown off their disguises and revealed themselves as Vicari assassins. They wore black armor that bent the light around them, making them hard to see clearly. They carried blades that hummed with deadly energy. But they were not alone. More assassins emerged from the crowd, 10, 15, 20 of them. They had been hiding among the guests all evening, waiting for the signal. Guards rushed forward and died. The assassins were fast and precise. They cut through the Zorath soldiers like they were made of paper. Guests ran in every direction, trampling each other in their panic. Commander Kethra drew his weapon and charged at the nearest assassin. They fought briefly before Kethra was knocked backward, wounded but alive. He hit the floor hard and struggled to rise. 3 assassins reached the platform where the queen stood. Valari had risen from her throne, her golden eyes blazing with fury. She had powers of her own, mental abilities that could crush an ordinary mind. She reached out with her thoughts and struck at the assassins. One fell, his brain destroyed. The second stumbled, clutching his head. But the third was stronger. He pushed through her mental attack and lunged forward, his blade aimed at her throat. Daniel moved. No one saw him clearly. He was simply there, between the queen and the blade, moving with a speed that should have been impossible for a human. His hand caught the assassin's wrist and twisted. Bones cracked. The blade fell. Before the assassin could react, Daniel struck him in the throat with his other hand. The assassin crumpled. 2 more attackers came from the left. Daniel grabbed the fallen blade and spun to meet them. His movements were fluid and precise, without any wasted motion. He blocked the first strike, redirected the second, and cut both assassins down in less than 3 seconds. The watching crowd fell silent. Even in the middle of chaos, they stopped to stare. A 5th assassin appeared behind Daniel. He did not look, but somehow he knew. He stepped aside at the exact moment the attack came, letting the blade pass through empty air. Then he grabbed the assassin's arm, pulled him off balance, and broke his neck with a single sharp motion. Another assassin raised an energy weapon. It was aimed at Valari. Daniel moved again. He stepped directly into the path of the beam. The shot should have killed him, but light flared around his body, a personal shield that appeared from nowhere, materializing from a small device hidden under his clothes. The energy beam struck the shield and scattered into harmless sparks. Daniel walked toward the shooter. The assassin fired again and again. Each shot hit the shield and did nothing. When Daniel reached him, he took the weapon from his hands almost gently. Then he hit the assassin once, and the man did not get up. The remaining assassins looked at each other. They had expected to kill a queen and escape into the night. They had not expected this. They ran. Daniel let them go. His mission was protection, not pursuit. The throne room was filled with the sound of crying and moaning. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, guards, servants, guests. The smell of blood hung heavy in the air. Daniel turned to face the queen. His shield flickered and faded. His breathing was slightly fast, but his face was calm. "Are you hurt, my queen?" he asked. Valari stared at him. She had seen warriors before. She had seen killers. But she had never seen anyone move like Daniel Cole had just moved. Those were not the skills of a mechanic. Those were the skills of something else entirely. "Who are you?" she whispered. Daniel did not answer. He just looked at her with those calm eyes, waiting. Commander Kethra limped over to them. Blood ran from a wound on his arm, but he ignored it. He was staring at Daniel with a mix of shock and something that might have been respect. "That shield technology," Kethra said slowly. "We do not have anything like it. No one does. Where did you get it?" "It was a gift," Daniel said, "from people who wanted to make sure I stayed alive." "What people? What are you?" Daniel looked at both of them, the queen and her commander, the 2 most powerful people in the Dominion. He had spent weeks pretending to be invisible. Now, they were truly seeing him for the first time. "We should discuss this somewhere private," he said. "There is much I need to tell you." Valari nodded slowly. Her mind was racing with questions, with theories, with fear and fascination. She had married this man believing he was a harmless symbol. She had dismissed him as unimportant. Now she understood that she had been living with a mystery wrapped in the shape of a man, and she was going to find out the truth. The guards secured the throne room. Medical teams arrived to help the wounded. The surviving assassins who had fled would be hunted down later. For now, there were more important matters. Queen Valari of the Zorath Dominion led her husband and her commander to her private chambers. The doors closed behind them. "Now," she said, her voice hard as steel, "you will tell me everything." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since arriving on Zorath Prime, he stopped pretending. "Very well," he said. "Let me tell you who I really am." The Queen's private chambers were silent, except for the soft hum of machines that kept the room secure. Valari sat on a chair carved from dark crystal. Kethra stood near the door, his wounded arm now wrapped in bandages. Daniel remained standing, his back straight, his eyes clear. The mechanic was gone. The man who stood before them now was something different. "Start from the beginning," Valari commanded. "No more lies." Daniel nodded. "My name really is Daniel Cole. That part is true, but I was never a simple mechanic. I served in a division of Earth's military that does not officially exist. We have no name, no records, no public identity. Even most human governments do not know about us." "A secret military unit," Kethra said. "For what purpose?" "Protection, study, preparation." Daniel paused. When humans first discovered that they were not alone in the universe, they were afraid. They saw species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. They saw empires that ruled hundreds of worlds, and they saw how those empires treated the weak. Valari's eyes narrowed. "You thought we would conquer you. We knew someone would try eventually, and we knew we could not win a direct war. Humans are young. Our technology is primitive compared to yours. Our population is tiny. So we decided to hide our true strength." Kethra stepped forward. "What strength? We defeated you. The war lasted only 8 months." "Did you?" Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "You won most battles, yes. But you never reached Earth. You never found our hidden stations. You lost more ships than you expected. And when it was over, you decided that conquering us was not worth the cost." The words hung in the air. Valari realized with growing unease that Daniel was right. The war had ended not because the Zorath had won, but because the Zorath had decided to stop. "That was the plan all along," Daniel continued. "Make the war painful enough that you would choose peace instead of total victory. We were never trying to defeat you. We were trying to make you stop." Valari stood up slowly. "And the marriage? The treaty? Was that also part of your plan?" "No. The treaty was real. The Galactic Council really did select me at random." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "But once I was selected, certain people saw an opportunity. They trained me, equipped me, and sent me here with a specific mission." "To spy on me?" Valari said coldly. "No. To protect you." That was not the answer she expected. She stared at him, waiting for an explanation. "Earth has been watching the Zorath Dominion for decades," Daniel said. "We have studied your politics, your history, your leaders. We know that you have been one of the most reasonable rulers in Zorath history. You conquered worlds, yes, but you did not destroy them. You allowed other species to live. You kept trade routes open. You maintained stability." Kethra frowned. "You make it sound like we were gentle." "Compared to your predecessors, you were. Queen Valari's grandmother burned entire planets for minor offenses. Her father executed ambassadors for speaking out of turn. But Valari made peace with Earth when she could have kept fighting. She reformed laws that oppressed, conquered species. She reduced torture and execution. Valari felt a strange sensation in her chest. No one had ever described her reign this way. Her own nobles thought she was too soft. Her enemies thought she was a conqueror. But this human was saying something different. Earth's leaders did the math, Daniel continued. If you die, the next ruler will almost certainly be worse. Much worse. War will spread across the galaxy. Humanity might be destroyed. So they sent me to make sure you stay alive. The room was silent for a long moment. The shield, Kethra finally said. The technology. You said it was a gift. From the best scientists on Earth. Technology that we have never shared with anyone. Technology that the galaxy does not even know exists. Show me, Valari demanded. Daniel reached under his sleeve and removed a device no larger than a button. He handed it to Kethra, who examined it with growing amazement. This is impossible, the commander muttered. The energy density alone would require systems the size of a ship. How did you make it so small? Humans learn fast, Daniel said simply. We had to. We knew the universe was dangerous, and we knew we had no friends. So we developed in secret. We built technologies that no one would expect from a species as young as us. Valari watched her husband with new eyes. Everything she thought she knew about humans was wrong. They were not primitive. They were not weak. They were hiding. How much more are you hiding? She asked quietly. Daniel met her gaze. Enough. We have ships that can outrun anything in your fleet. We have weapons that can crack open moons. We have soldiers trained from childhood in ways of fighting that would make your best warriors look slow. But we do not use these things because the moment we do, everyone will know. And once they know, they will stop underestimating us. That is our greatest advantage. The fact that no one takes us seriously. Valari sat back down. Her mind was spinning. The weak, short-lived humans that she had dismissed as inferior were actually a hidden power. And she had married one of their deadliest warriors without even knowing it. Why tell me this now? She asked. Because the Vicari will attack soon. Tonight's assassination was just the beginning. They want to destabilize your empire before launching a full invasion. And when they come, you will need help. You are offering Earth's help? I am offering my help. Earth will not move openly unless you request it. And even then, they will want something in return. What? Alliance. True alliance. Not the master-servant relationship that other species have with you, but equals working together. Humans want a seat at the table, not a place under it. Kethra made a skeptical sound. You expect us to treat humans as equals? After everything? I expect you to make a practical decision, Daniel replied. The Vicari are coming with a fleet twice the size of yours. You cannot defeat them alone. You can ask other empires for help, but they will demand too much and deliver too little. Or you can trust the species that has already proven it can fight. The silence stretched on. Finally, Valari spoke. You say your mission is to protect me, but you lied to me for months. How can I trust anything you say? Daniel looked at her with an expression she'd not seen before. It was softer, more human. I did not lie about everything. When I said I was content here, that was true. When I fixed machines and learned your customs and tried to understand your people, that was real. The mission brought me here. But staying, that became my choice. Valari searched his face for deception. She had lived 200 years. She had learned to read lies in people's eyes, but she saw none in his. The War Council meets at dawn, she finally said. You will attend. Not as a husband standing on a balcony, but as an advisor. I want to see if your skills are as good as you claim." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "As you wish, my queen." Kethra stepped forward. "And if he betrays us?" Valari looked at Daniel, then back at her commander. "Then I will kill him myself. But something tells me that will not be necessary." She walked to the window and looked out at the dark city. Somewhere out there, the Vicari were preparing for war, and for the first time, she had a weapon they would never expect, a human who was so much more than he appeared. "Get some rest," she told Daniel without turning around. "Tomorrow we plan for war." Daniel left the room quietly. In the hallway, he allowed himself a moment of relief. The secret was out. The mask was off. Now the real work could begin. He pulled out the small communication device and sent a short message to Earth. "Cover exposed. Queen is receptive. Preparing for next phase." Far away, Laura Cole read the message and smiled grimly. Her brother had done the impossible once again. Now came the hard part. The Vicari invasion began 3 days later. Their fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm of metal and fire. Over 2,000 warships spread across Zorath space, more than anyone had predicted. They hit 5 systems at once, overwhelming defenses that had stood for centuries. Queen Valari stood in the command center of her flagship, the Throne of Shadows. Around her, officers shouted updates and orders. The tactical display showed red dots spreading like a disease across her territory. "We are losing the outer colonies," Kethra reported. His voice was steady, but his face was grim. "Their numbers are too great. We cannot hold." Valari gripped the railing in front of her. She had ruled for 90 years. She had never faced defeat like this. The Vicari were not just attacking, they were crushing everything in their path. "Recall the reserve fleet," she ordered. "Pull back to the inner systems. We defend the core worlds." "That will mean abandoning millions of citizens," Kethra said quietly. "I know." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. Daniel stood nearby, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. He had attended every war council since the assassination attempt. He had offered suggestions that proved surprisingly useful, but he had not yet shown his full hand. Now Valari turned to him. "You said humans could help," she said. "Is that still true?" "Yes." "What would it cost me?" Daniel looked at her. "I told you before. Alliance. True partnership between our peoples. You treat humans as equals, give them a voice in galactic affairs, and stop viewing them as lesser beings. In exchange, we fight beside you." Valari laughed bitterly. "You ask for this now? When I am about to lose everything?" "I ask because now you understand what we offer. Before, you would have refused without thinking. Now, you know the value of what we bring." She hated that he was right. She hated that this human could read her so easily, but she hated the Vicari more. "If I agree, how quickly can your people arrive?" Daniel pulled out his communication device. "They are already here, waiting at the edge of the system. I signaled them 2 days ago when it became clear the invasion was imminent. They have been watching." Kethra stepped forward, shock on his face. "A human fleet has been sitting in our space for 2 days without us detecting them." "We are very good at hiding," Daniel said simply. Valari closed her eyes for a moment. This was the choice she had to make. Accept help from humans and show the galaxy that the mighty Zorath needed others to survive, or refuse and watch her empire burn. It was not really a choice at all. "Make the call," she said. "Bring your people in." Daniel nodded. He pressed a sequence on his device and spoke a single word. "Execute." For several seconds, Nothing happened. Then the tactical display lit up with new signals. Ships appearing from nowhere, materializing out of the darkness of space as if they had been invisible. There were only 47 human ships. Compared to the Vakari fleet, they were nothing. Compared to the Zorath Navy, they were a joke. But when they began to move, everything changed. The human ships were small and fast, moving with a speed that made Zorath vessels look like floating rocks. They weaved through enemy formations, impossible to track, impossible to target. And their weapons were something out of nightmares. Beams of pure white energy cut through Vakari shields like they did not exist. Missiles that seemed to have minds of their own hunted down targets and struck weak points with perfect accuracy. A single human destroyer disabled 3 Vakari battleships in under a minute. The Vakari fleet, so confident moments ago, fell into chaos. They had planned for Zorath resistance. They had not planned for this. Laura Cole commanded the human fleet from the bridge of a ship called the Silent Hunter. She watched the battle unfold with the same calm expression her brother always wore. Around her, her crew worked in perfect coordination, every action precise and purposeful. "Focus fire on their command ships," she ordered. "Break their coordination." The human fleet obeyed, like wolves cutting through a herd. They targeted the Vakari commanders and eliminated them one by one. Without leadership, the enemy ships began to falter. They stopped coordinating their attacks. They started making mistakes. And the Zorath fleet, reorganized under Valari's command, began to push back. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Vakari invasion was shattered. Over half their fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated into hyperspace, broken and humiliated. The galaxy would talk about this battle for centuries. On the throne of shadows, Queen Valari watched the surviving human ships take position alongside her own fleet. She felt strange emotions that she could not name. Relief, gratitude, and something else. A new understanding of the universe and her place in it. Daniel appeared beside her. He looked tired. The battle had taken something out of him, even though he had not fired a single weapon. "Your sister fights well," Valari said quietly. "She learned from the best." "You?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Our parents. They were soldiers too. It runs in the family." Valari turned to face him fully. "You saved my empire today. You and your people. We fought together. The victory belongs to both of us. But it was your ships that made the difference. Everyone saw it. Everyone will know." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, the secret is out now. Humans will no longer be underestimated. That part of our strategy is over." "Do you regret it?" He thought about the question. "No, hiding was always temporary. Eventually we would have to show what we are. I am glad it happened this way, saving lives instead of taking them. Building alliance instead of fear." Valari looked at him for a long moment. She remembered the day he arrived, the small human in simple clothes who seemed so unremarkable. She remembered dismissing him as a political ornament, a pet to be tolerated. She had been so wrong. "We have much to discuss," she said. "Treaties to write, agreements to make. The galaxy will be watching every move we make." "I know. It will be difficult. Many of my people still view humans as inferior. They will resist. And many of my people still view Zorath as conquerors. Change will not come easily." Valari extended one of her hands toward him. It was a Zorath gesture of partnership, something normally reserved for equals. "Then we will be patient," she said, "and we will work together, as allies." Daniel took her hand. His grip was warm and firm. "As allies," he agreed. They stood together at the observation window, watching Zorath and human ships patrol the space around them. The stars stretched out in all directions, endless and beautiful. Somewhere out there, other empires were already learning what had happened. They were adjusting their calculations, revising their opinions about the small blue planet called Earth. "What happens now?" Valari asked softly. Daniel looked at her. Over the past months, he had played a role, worn a mask, hidden everything that he was. But in this moment, standing beside her after everything they had been through, he felt something shift inside him. "Now we build something better," he said. "Together." Valari leaned slightly closer to him. Not the queen and her political husband, but two people who had survived something terrible and found unexpected connection. "Together," she repeated. Behind them, the crews of both ships worked side by side, beginning the long process of repairs and recovery. Kethra watched Daniel with new respect. Laura Cole began the journey back to Earth with stories that would change human history, and the galaxy watched as something new was born. An alliance that no one had predicted, between an ancient empire and a young species that everyone had underestimated. The Zorath Dominion and humanity stood together now. They had fought as allies and won as partners. The universe would never look at either of them the same way again. Queen Valari had married what she thought was an ordinary human. She had found something far more extraordinary, and this was only the beginning.